Hi guys, we will start with the biology of grade 10. In chapter 1, we will talk about the science of life. And in this chapter, we have 3 sections. Section 1, we will explain the main characters of life and of all living things. In section 2, we will talk about the scientific methods and how the scientists do the research and what are these steps to do the research. In section 3, we will talk about the discovery of microscope, the types of microscope, and the measurement. So let's start with section 1, the main characters of life. In this section, we will talk about the main character of all living things. The first character of all living thing is cell. And you know that all the organisms are made up of cell. What is cell? Cell is the basic unit of structure and function, and it's the basic unit of life. All the organisms develop from cells. We can classify the organisms into 2 major groups. First, we have the unicellular organism, and the second group of organisms are the multicellular organisms. What we mean by unicellular organism? Uni, it means one. So all these organisms that they consist of only one cell are named as unicellular organism. Like what? Like yeast and bacteria. On the other hand, we have multicellular organism. And what you mean by multicellular organism are those type of organisms that they composed of more than one cell. Like in human, in fungi, in frog, they are all made up of many cells, and that's why they named as multicellular organisms. In multicellular organisms, the cells are specialized to play a specific role. And as you all know that the organisms are made up of what? They are made up of the level of organization that we talked about it before. We have cell, and group of cells make tissue, group of tissues make the organ, and the organs, and group of organs make the organ system, and finally they make the organism. So the smallest unit of life is the cell. And in multicellular organism, they have many cells, and each cell have a specific function to do. For example, the nervous cell, which their function is to send and receive the nervous impulses inside the body. The second main character of all living things is organization. What we mean by organization is that all living things are highly organized. At which level they are highly organized? At both molecular and cellular levels. What we mean by molecular and cellular levels? As you all know that we have what we mean by cellular is that all organisms are made up of cells. Group of cells make tissues, group of tissues make the organs, group of organs make the organ system, and finally they make the organism. And what we mean by molecular, that inside the cells, you know that inside any cell we have small structures which named as organelles, and inside these organelles we have molecules, and these molecules are made up finally of the smallest unit which is named as the atom. So they are highly organized. All these organisms are highly organized in both these levels, molecular and cellular levels. And as we said before, that each specific cell structures carry out particular function. For example, as we said, we have the nervous cell, the muscular cells, and the red blood cells. Each one have its specific function to do inside the body. The third main character of all living things is energy use. You all know, guys, that all living things need energy, and all living things use energy in a process named as metabolism. What do you mean by metabolism? Metabolism is the summation of all the chemical reactions and those chemical processes that occur inside the organism. We have many chemical reactions, some of them you read it in the chemistry, and which happen outside our body, and on the other hand we have other chemical reactions happen inside the organism and inside our body. For example, the aerobic respiration or the cellular respiration which happen inside our body. The summation of all these chemical reactions that happen inside the body are named as metabolism. All organisms require energy to maintain the molecular and cellular organization that we mentioned before, and also to grow and to reproduce and do the other activities. Almost all this energy comes from where? It comes from the sun through the process of photosynthesis. And you all know, guys, that what we mean by photosynthesis, which is this process that do by the plants and how they get the energy from the sunlight and they produce the food. So the main energy for life on Earth come from where? It comes from the process of photosynthesis and it comes from the sun. We can classify the organisms according to how they obtain or how they get their energy into two major groups. We have autotrophs, and on the other hand we have heterotrophs. What do you mean by autotrophs and what do you mean by heterotrophs? Autotrophs are all these organisms that they get or obtain their energy by making their own food. Like what? Like we have the plants, we have algae. They make their own food, and that's why we say that they are autotrophs. On the other hand, we have heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are those organisms that they take in food from autotrophs, from heterotrophs, or maybe from both of them, in order to get their energy for life. Like, for example, we have animals and we have fungi. The fourth main character of all living things is homeostasis. What do you mean by homeostasis? Homeostasis is maintaining stable internal conditions. And you all know that all living things have the ability to maintain stable internal condition. Even single cells, which we said that they named as unicellular organism, they work up together to keep their internal environment stable. For example, maybe by controlling the amount of water content inside the body or inside them, by taking in or releasing water, or controlling, for example, the temperature also. Like us in our body, that our body temperature, it's near 37 degrees. Other type of organism have another regulating systems in order to regulate their body and to maintain internal environmental condition stable. For example, the feathers of the bird become more erect in cold weather. This traps an insulating layer of air that surrounds the bird's body. So, without these mechanisms, organisms can die. For example, a cell's water content is closely controlled by the taking in or releasing of the water. A cell that takes too much water will rupture or will burst and finally die. Also, on the other hand, if the cell that doesn't get enough water, it will also shrivel and shrink or die. So homeostasis is the process of maintaining stable level of internal conditions, even though the environmental conditions are constantly changing. So even if the environment change, the homeostasis or maintaining stable internal environment will remain. Organisms, they have regulatory systems that maintain these internal conditions, like as we mentioned before, temperature or water content, for example, uptake of nutrients also. So, in fact, multicellular organisms usually have more than one way of maintaining important aspects of their internal environment. For example, also, the owl's temperature is maintained about 40 degrees to keep a constant temperature, and owl cells burn fuel to produce body heat. In addition, an owl's feathers can fluff up in cold weather. In this way, they trap an insulating layer of air next to the bird's body to maintain its body's temperature. The fifth main character of all living things is growth. All living things grow, as do as non-living things. Non-living things like crystals or isolates, they grow by what? They grow by accumulating more of the material that they are made of. Like in this figure, we have the crystal and how they grow. Actually, they do not grow like us, like in the living organism by cell division, cell enlargement. They only accumulate more of the material that they made up of. While on the other hand, the living things grow as a result of cell division and cell enlargement. We have the cell division in unicellular and in multicellular organisms. And you know that the cell division in unicellular organism only produce more copies of the organism. And the cell division is the formation of two cells from an existing cell. So we have one cell which is divided to produce two cells, and the two become four, the four become 8. Newly divided cells, what happened to them? They enlarge in size until they are the size of a mature cell. While in multicellular organisms, the cell division and cell enlargement together result in growth. And finally, we have development also in multicellular organism, which we can't find it in unicellular. In unicellular, we have only cell division and cell enlargement, which we have, as we said, one cell divided to become two cells, and the two become four, and these cells are enlarged in size until they are the size of a mature cell. While in multicellular organism, we have cell division and cell enlargement. Then we have the development. What do you mean by development? Development is a process by which an adult organism arises, which is produced by repeating cell division and cell differentiation, or we can say cell specialization. So development is the process by which an adult organism arise. It's happened by repeated cell division and cell differentiation or specialization. What do you mean by that? You know that our body is composed of about 50 trillion cells, and all these cells come from or derived from what? From a fertilized egg. We have an egg and a sperm, and when fertilization occurs, they form a zygote or they form a fertilized egg. After that, this cell undergoes many cell division and many cell differentiation. And what you mean by cell differentiation? The differentiation is the change of an unspecialized cells into specialized cell. So we have unspecialized cells, which are all the same, they do all the same function, and then they change to specialized cell. And now these specialized cell, any cell of them have its specific function to do. Differentiation occurs many times during the development of a multicellular organism, as it changed from a simple zygote to a complex system of cells and tissues. So as we said that we have an egg and a sperm, fertilization occurs to produce a fertilized egg or a zygote. After that, they undergo many cell divisions. These cell division, after the cell division, we have differentiation, and differentiation, it means changing the cell from unspecialized to specialized cell. For example, we have these stem cells, which is all these cells are changed to specialized cell. They are unspecialized and then they change to specialized cell by a process which is named as differentiation. In differentiation, these stem cells can make muscle cell, blood cell, nervous cell, muscle cell, liver cell, and intestinal cell, for example. And now each one of these cells have its specific function to do. For example, the nerve cell receive and transmit the nerve impulses. And finally, the last main character of all living things is reproduction. And all organisms produce new organisms like themselves in a process called reproduction. During reproductions, the organisms transmit the DNA or the hereditary information to their babies or their offspring. All species of organisms have the ability to reproduce, as you know. Reproduction is not essential to the survival of an individual organism. Why? It's not important for the survival of an individual organism because no organism lives forever. So what is the main function or the importance of reproduction? The importance of reproduction is essential for the continuation of a species. For example, the glass frogs will lay many eggs in its lifetime, and only a few babies or a few offspring will reach adulthood and successfully reproduce. We have two types of reproduction. We have sexual reproduction and we have asexual reproduction. And what we mean by sexual reproduction? In sexual reproduction, the hereditary information, or let's say the DNA, for example, from two organisms is combined to produce a new baby or a new individual with new traits, like in, for example, the frogs. So here, the babies or the offspring are not identical copy of their parents. And we start with two parents, with two organisms. Then the DNA of these two organisms will bind together, will mix together to make a new individual with new character or new trait. While in asexual reproduction, the hereditary information from different organisms. Here the hereditary information is not combined like in bacteria. We start with only one organism, and this organism is split into two. So one cell will give rise to two cells, and each of these two cells contain an identical copy of the hereditary information from the original bacterium. So the opposite happened here in asexual reproduction. In asexual, we started from one parent, while in sexual we have two parents. In asexual reproduction, this one parent or this one organism, like bacteria, will divide into two organisms, or into two, split into two cells, or in two bacteria, for example, let's say. And now these two bacteria are identical copies of the first bacterium. So it's like a copy machine making copies after copies from this organism with the same genetic material or the same hereditary information of the first bacterium. While in sexual reproduction, when the two organisms, they combine their DNA or the hereditary information from both of them, they finally produce offsprings or babies with different trait or different character or different hereditary information. We have a question here. Why are so many organisms yet to be discovered, identified, and described? And as you know that we have thousands of species of organisms are not discovered till now. Because the world of biology is so diverse and rich, many organisms that have not been identified. Because some of them live in regions of the world that are difficult to explore. Like, for example, some of these organisms, like they live in dense tropical rainforest, or maybe, for example, in deep ocean waters. Some organisms also are so small that they easily escape from their detection. Thanks for watching the video. Bye.